according to David Crystal in his book, English as a Global Language, about 85% of international organizations now uses English as one of their working languages. English is becoming more and more popular because it is the lingua franca for a lot of trading, science, and many other industries. As a native speaker, have you ever wondered how difficult it is to learn English as a second language, ESL? In fact, ESL students have faced a lot of obstacles during their process of learning English, including choosing the most appropriate teacher. Today, I'm going to inform you of the advantages and disadvantages of both types of teacher, native speaker and non-native ESL teacher. As an English major focusing on teaching ESL, I'm very concerned and have done extensive research on this topic that makes me quite knowledgeable. I will do this by informing you of, first, the native speaker's good competence of English, but weakness in English grammar. Second is the non-native speaker's good competence of explaining grammar, but their weakness in English proficiency. Currently, in many language centers in non-English speaking countries, in especially Asia, would recruit only the native speakers even if they have no teaching certification, because they believe that these native speakers would best fulfill the role of the language teacher only. And this belief comes from the fact that the native speakers are born with an innate ability to acquire language when they're very little. They obviously have the best level of English, including fluency, accent, intonation, and especially very deep cultural knowledge. The native fluency would help the students to improve their listening and speaking skills, while the cultural knowledge would help the students with very vivid information about the real life of the native speakers in the native country that no source of information can compare. Native speakers also have some disadvantages because they are unable to explain the grammar rules in English. This argument is well conveyed in language files by the Department of Linguistics at Ohio State University. As a speaker of English, we know perfectly well how to speak English, but they are unable to explain and be conscious of most of that knowledge. This knowledge is called meta-linguistic awareness, and in this case, native speakers would have no such knowledge and is no more than just an answer key to their students, because they would not be able to explain anything to their students. The language barrier is also another disadvantage of the native speakers, because this will limit the interaction between the teacher and their monolingual students. Because such as if the students have a request to ask for an equivalent in English and their native language, then the native speaker would not be able to. In comparison with native speaker, non-native ESL teachers would also have some advantages and disadvantages. For example, non-native ESL teachers would have the master ability in teaching grammar and passing exam. David Gretel has estimated that there are 750 million English learners all over the world in his book, The Future of English, making English rank first among the most learned and taught languages in the world. This high number of students actually has limited the testing method to only mass academic writing exam and grammar tests. That's why Vivian Cook, in his second language learning and language teaching book, has stated that ESL teachers who are previously ESL students would overcome the same difficulties and would also overcome the same studying process that will be able to guide their students through the same process and pass these exams. The non-native ESL teachers would have limit in language proficiency. As Libby Green in English with an Accent state that non-native accents are always perceived as inferior, less qualified, less effective, and they argue that these non-native ESL teachers would be more dependent on textbook, more theoretical, and less culturally oriented than the native colleagues, which is a very important factor in teaching language. In conclusion, now that you've understand the differences between native speaker and non-native ESL teachers, the native speakers will have a very good strength in English competence, but their weakness in English grammar, while the non-native ESL teachers would be very good at explaining English grammar rules, but they're limited in English proficiency. That's why making a wise choice would depend on a lot of factors, including the recruiter and the students themselves. But this speech is only intended to give an unbiased view on both types of teachers. So what type of teacher would you choose as a starter of English?